Hello, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. For some reason, my computer decided to give up the ghost for a minute. So we've got just over 3 minutes left to qualifying. Shaw's user currently leads the way with a 2:29.2. Nenad Vladislavovich is in P2 with Kerbalija P3, Papadin P4, Flat P5, Krasminski P6, and Laurinavicius P7. Sylvander and Van den Berg look like they're trying to work together, the two teammates, to move themselves slightly further up the grid. George Relistas has just gone and banged in a 2:30.9. George is going quicker, he's up to P10. Who is currently struggling? Stu Neal is yet to set a time. How is Stu Neal doing here on the run down to T4? He's half a second back from Shaw's, but he is currently green, so Stu Neal is on a lap. Let's stick with him and see what he can do relative to his teammate, although Stu Neal is carrying significantly more ballast than Shaw's user at the moment, due to Shaw's having that terrible week last week at Donington Park Grand Prix. Stu Neal in a nice bit of tarmac all on his own. No one to block his lap time, but also no one to give him a tow either. But I must admit, I never found working with a teammate and trying to tow each other around was always the best idea. You normally set your best lap time when you're on your own and you can concentrate. I tended to always mess my lap time up if I was trying to run in behind somebody and set a lap. So perhaps that's why Stu Neal has decided, no, I'm not going to run in the Apex train and I'm going to run totally on my own and try and set my own lap time. He is still, now he's doing still his personal best second sector of the session, but he is 1.5 seconds back from Shaw's user, whose current lead lap time is a 2:29.2. So a second and a half back for that will put Stu Neal roughly into around about 10th, 11th place at the moment. Let's see as he comes through the bus stop and up towards the line. That is Relistas just ahead of him in the number 18. What can Stu do? P17. Stu in the end over 2 seconds back, and that is Stu Neal's final run. He will not get another chance. As soon as that qualifying clock ticks down to 0, that is the end of qualifying, unlike other race sims which will allow you to finish the lap you are currently on. Race Room doesn't do that. As soon as the qualifying clock hits 0, that is the end of the session. So currently it looks as if, as we expected, Shaw's user is going to lead them away. Nick Papadim in the flying Peugeot in P2, Nenad in P3, Poddy, Flack P4, Bojan Kerbalija in P5, Charles Sylvander in P6, Krasminski P7, Rob Van Over P8, Laurinavicius P9, Phil Lawson P10, George Relistas P11, Pascal Jean Petro with maximum weight on board in P12, Ivan Novakovic in P13, Manuel Alves P14, Paul Newton P15, Boki Obradovic 16, Stu Neal 17, Carl Smith 18, Rob South P19, struggling with the weight on board. I spoke to Rob early in the week and he's not liking the current 48 kilos on his Honda. So he has struggled a little bit and he is in P19. Why? Just lost me timing tower. Baudetto was in 20th, Suzuki 21st, Campion 22nd. That's a great qualifying from Bill Campion. Nota in 23rd, Creed in 24th, Simon Cook in 25th. And I have, for some reason, lost the rest of the timing tower, which is really annoying, because I can't finish off the rest of the grid for you. But somewhere in the back there will be Derek Neal. Mauricio Julian in 27th. I've got it back. Derek Neal in 26th. Julian in 27th. Tamburin in 28th. And Alessandro Ferilli in 29th. So there are some quick Pro-Am drivers that either really struggled or didn't manage to set a lap in that qualifying session. So it'll be really interesting to see how well they can come through the field. And also how well the guys with ballast get on these long straights with that extra weight on board. So if you are interested in giving the TCSRL a try, there is a link to our Discord page. Jump in, say hi. The practice server is always running 24/7. I'm sure you will always find a driver on there at some point during most weekday evenings getting some practice in, ready for the next round. So here we go. Race 1, the sprint race. George Usa will lead them away. We're just waiting for the lights to go out. And that's it, we're away. George Relistas, I saw flash up. He has got a drive-through penalty. He's also made contact, I think, by the looks of it. Novakovic has been turned into the pit wall. I think that may have been George when he got away too eagerly. We may have to try and have a look back at that post-race. So, Shores leads the way from Nick Papadin, from Poddy Flack, from Kerbelesia, Vladisavljevic and Charles Sylvander. Let's have a quick look with Stu Neal in the middle of the pack as we come up through Eau Rouge. And he's had to go offline. Stu will get a slow-down penalty for that. But what he'll do is he'll cleverly lift off the throttle, tuck in behind Paul Newton, and just feather the throttle, serve that slowdown, whilst taking the toe as well, so he'll lose as little amount of time and speed as possible. But he's cut the nose off for Boki Obradovic there a little bit. And I think that's got him another slowdown penalty there. But he has managed to make a little bit of a gap to Boki, so he will be able to serve that quite easily. He's also going on the attack on Newton, squeezing his way down the inside. Newton will look to cut back to the inside. Stu just about holds him off. But Stu Neal being very aggressive on the opening lap to try and hold his position with all these unballasted cars in and around him. And George Relistas has gone off after Pascal Jean-Petre, who is already trying to have a look at Phil Lawson. There is Phil, who's just tucked up behind Laura Novicius himself. And then ahead of that is Sylvander and Van den Burr in the two Hyundai i30s. And Jean-Petre's got a little look on the inside of Lawson here. Lawson's going to try and squeeze him on the apex. Pascal, this is going to hurt Pascal now if he can't get back in the line, because the flying Honda of Relistas is going to come past, and Stu Neal's there as well. That's it. Once Jean-Petre was out and looked to make the move, he really needs to try and just stay behind Lawson, because with that weight on board, he was never going to have the pace to go past him. And as you saw, as soon as he moved out and left the gap, somebody else filled it. And Pascal couldn't fight his way back into the line, so he has lost out to Stu Neal. Pascal down to 12th. Stu Neal has made 6 places on that opening lap. He's made contact with his teammate. Little tap on the back of Phil Lawson from Stu Neal. Meanwhile, out front, Usa leads away from Papadin, from Flack, who's made a slight break from Bojan and Nenad. Nenad looking like he's pushing Bojan down the road. But I'm sure the two of them will be trying to work together slightly. Make that little break from Krasminski and the two flying i30s in behind. And then look about setting to go and attack the cars ahead. And indeed they are closing in on Poddy Flack and Nick Papadin. And Shaw's user has already got his gap out now to over a second. So Shaw's is away and gone. Papa Dim now is starting to become the roadblock. With Poddy Flat, Kerbalesia and Vladislavovich in behind. There's a small gap back to Krasminski, who just ran a little bit wide there, and he has got a slow down penalty for that. Let's take a little look further back. How are the AMs getting on? We're a bit light on the AMs. Bill Campion leads those, currently in 22nd. And just as we flick to Bill, commentator's curse, Bill runs it off the road a little bit, and Mauricio Julian has followed him through, which means Manuel Alves has jumped up a place. And immediately set about attacking Bill. Manuel Alves, who is in the Pro-Am 2 category, so Bill doesn't have to necessarily fight Alves too hard here. Julian and Derek Neal behind are Bill's main competitors at the moment. Let's see what Bill does as we make our run now down towards the bus stop chicane. Holding that gap pretty steady at the minute. What will happen under braking? Alves closes up under braking. Bill goes very tight. Doesn't perhaps get the drive off the corner that Alves will get. Let's see now as we head in towards turn 1. Alves looks much more confident. He's moved to the inside. What's Bill going to do here? Bill, yep, takes a nice wide line. Gives the space to Alves. But at the same time, he's not going to let him have it easy. And Bill Campion gets a very, very good drive out of there and moves back ahead of Alves. Slightly further up the road, we've got a couple of battles going on here. This is Tom Creed and Carl Smith. And ahead of that, we've got Suzuki and Rob South in the Alfa Romeo and Honda Civic, sorry, not Honda Accord, respectively. Creed gets ahead of Smith. Suzuki ahead of South. South looking back at Suzuki. Is that a look to the inside as Rob South? Suzuki cuts him off. South moves back wide. Trying to go the long way round Rob South. I don't think that's going to work. And now he's going to come under pressure from Tom Creed in behind. Creed is going to have a look into the fast double right-hander. No, he's not. He just tucks back in behind for now. Rob really struggling with a Honda with that weight on through that middle sector. Suzuki has pulled away. And Creed looking much the racier at the moment. In behind that, Carl Smith needs to make up for lost time after missing last week. And he's going the right way about it. Let's have a little look up the road to how Jean Petra is getting on. He's dropped back from Stu Neal, but he's currently not under a massive threat from Newton. But that Honda, as it gets towards the end of the straight, really does close up on Pascal. You get the feeling that this could be a matter of time before Pascal loses another place. The Astra not the best in a straight line without the weight, let alone top ballast. And the Honda is one of the quickest cars in this WTCR class. So let's jump on board with Paul Newton and see what happens as we head through Eau Rouge and down the Kemmel Straight. So, does he go flat? No, there's a slight lift over the curb. Jean Petra's run a bit wide. Now this is Newton's chance. This is where the Honda really will start to engage overdrive. This should be an absolute walk in the park for Paul Newton. He's out and he's alongside. And he is clearly through. So Jean Petre drops back. And if he's not too careful, he might come under threat from Boki Obradovic as well. After that, there is a little bit of a gap back towards Suzuki, Creed and the big gaggle of cars there. As Carl Smith now has a look down the inside of Rob South, who is himself trying to have a go back at Tom Creed, who has got through. And Creed a little bit over the curb. South just can't get the drive from the Honda. The Lincoln Co. is also no slouch in a straight line, and Carl Smith is now going to have a go down the inside of Rob South. These two were teammates last season in those Liqui Moly Hondas. Carl Smith has teamed up with Stephen Elwood in the DHL cars this time around. And Rob South is making his former teammate really work for this. And Carl has slipped wide. And that has brought him back under pressure from No Brakes racers Andrea Baldetto and Antonio Nota. Back up to the front battle. Papadim still leads the battle for second with Poddy Flak in behind. Nenad Vladisavljevic has moved ahead of Bojan Kurbalia up into P4, but is slowly but surely losing touch with Flak and Papadim ahead of him. Maybe they've switched to try and close that gap back up. Krasminski is starting to put some real pressure onto Kurbalia. And not too far in behind that are the two teammates of Van den Burr and Sylvander in the I-30s, who are going about their business very nice and quietly, but having a stellar debut in the I-30. Now then, what can Poddy do on the run down? Papadim moves to the right, goes defensive. Poddy's going to have to go the long way round, and he just hasn't quite got the legs. But Papadim's made a mistake, and he's had to cut the chicane, and he's flown over the sleeping policeman. That could give him some suspension damage, and that could be Papadim in real trouble now, because here comes Nenad Vladisavljevic. And if he has damaged the steering, Nick Papadim, there is only one way down from here, and that is backwards. Let's jump on board with Nick and see if he has made any damage. No, it looks like he may have gotten away with it. Steering wheel looks to be roughly pointing in the right direction. But he has lost 2 places. Now, what can Nick do to get this back? Needs to recompose himself. Nenad carrying a fair bit of weight ahead of him. So Nick just needs to get back to doing his rhythm, driving his line, and the pace that he showed in qualifying should drag him back towards Nenad's Cupra ahead. But whilst Nenad remains in the tow of Poddy Flak, it may negate whichever power and pace advantage that Nick has in the Peugeot. Let's see what happens as we run down towards the bus stop chicane. Georges Jussa is out and gone. Georges Jussa is already going through the bus stop chicane. That's how far away he is. He's 5 seconds ahead of Poddy Flak at the moment. Expect that to eke out a little bit more over this lap, which could be the final lap, or we're going to get 2 more. Very close there when he crossed the line, Georges Jussa. This may not be the last lap. That could throw a bit of a spanner into some people's works if they've run for a certain amount of laps in the car and tried not to take as little fuel as possible to save the weight. We'll find out if we get some people starting to lift and coast. Oh, Pascal Jean-Petre is closing back up towards Paul Newton in the Honda Civic. Can he close up enough? He is under half a second behind. And Newton is almost out of tow range from Stu Neal ahead of him. Tow range is normally roughly around about a second. John Petra, very consistent. And Newton just looks like he may be starting to struggle a little bit here. And John Petra closing back in. With just over half a lap to go. We've got Krzyminski up ahead, who was having a look at Bojan. He couldn't make it stick. And Nenad has got past Poddy Flack. I do apologise, we missed that on stream. And Krzyminski's made a bit of a slide, and that's going to allow Rob van den Berg through. Can his teammate Sylvander get through as well? Not quite. Krzyminski there. Through the S's, just lost the rear of the car. Perhaps broke a little bit too late. Got on the marbles on the outside. And now this is Sylvander. Tucked right up behind the boot lid of Krzyminski. Krzyminski, though, looks far more settled. Through the fast left-hander as we come into the bus stop. That is the end of the race. Has George User crossed the line? He has, but he hasn't crossed the line enough to make another lap. So George User wins from Nenad Savljevic. Poddy Flack will be in third place. Papadin fourth. Kerbalija fifth. Van den Berg sixth. Krzyminski seventh. Sylvander eighth. Lauren Officius ninth. Lawson 10th. Stu Neal 11th. Newton held on to 12th place. Pascal John Petra in 13th. Bojko Obradovic in 14th. Suzuki 15th. Creed 16th. Smith 17th. Rob South in P18. Baldetto 19th. Nota 20th. Alves 21st. Campion 22nd. Julian 23rd. Journey Tamburin went forward and then went backwards again in 24th. Derek Neal in 25th. And last of the finishers is Ivan Novakovic. And George User set the fastest lap of a 2:29.0. Everybody else was 2:30 and above. So that just goes to show just how much pace in the bag that George User has currently, running ballast free. But it will be the first time that I think he has managed to run a second round of a championship without any ballast on at all. Normally Shaw's would be running top weight by now, or at least some sort of weight, but then you don't become a multiple champion without being a half decent driver. Just need to update the server, so just bear with me a couple of minutes. So let's head back over to the practice session. We've got just a minute left for everybody to practice their pit stops or practice driving the car around with the extra fuel they're going to need on board. It is entirely up to them whether they choose to put fuel in during their pit stop or whether they choose to run with fuel for the entire race and choose to just change the tyres at the stop. That is entirely up to them. There is penalties for speeding in the pit lane on in this championship, so they need to make sure that they hit the limiter at the right time. They don't speed in the pit lane, otherwise that will constitute a drive-through penalty, which really will hinder their race. But when everyone's pushing, mistakes are made, and normally there is at least one high-profile name that tends to make a mistake come the pit stops. Hopefully not tonight, but we shall see. As we tick over now from practice, we will go into a minute's warm-up for everybody to get themselves settled, check their fuels in the car, check their pit stop strategy, make sure that they've got everything set how they need it, and then we will be underway with the P13 reverse grid. So Pascal Jean-Petre will be on pole position. Georges Youssou will be coming through the field from P13, but don't expect him to be in P13 for too long. Just waiting for the session to flick over. Not too sure why it hasn't yet. Hopefully it's not got stuck. Oh, there we go. So we'll have a minute's warm-up just while everyone gets set. A few people might go out and practice their launch control start, or just get an early feeling for the car with the fuel on board, cold tyres. They might just about get up to the top of Eau Rouge and find out how it's going to handle through there. But this is where I really do enjoy these longer feature races. It's where a bit of strategy comes into it. Can you pit early, make the tyres last, get out in clean air and get some laps in? You'll more than likely see some people do that, especially if they get stuck up behind somebody. Rather than look to make the pass, they might just dive in the pits, get their pit stop done early. That's what I normally used to like to do. Get in, get the tyres changed over, get the new tyres up to temperature, and then attack everybody when they were coming out of the pits on their colder tyres, if you hadn't already made up the ground in the clear air. But let's see what tactics people go with, depending how quickly Georges Youssou gets through the field. I would probably expect Shaw's to go a bit longer, especially if he gets through the field fairly quickly. I'll expect him to save his nice fresh tyres for a bit later on in the race, and look to go out and really attack the circuit and get the fastest lap in as well, and try and maximise his points haul from tonight's racing to get him back in contention with the likes of Jean-Petre, Neil, Nenad, Kerbalia. Right, the lights are flashing. We'll wait for them to go out, and they're out and away we go, and Jean-Petre leads them away. Newton alongside him. Stu Neal has had a really good start. Looks like he's going to go on the attack immediately down the inside of Paul Newton. Newton gives him a bit of space. Stu Neal is through. What can Newton do now as we run down towards Eau Rouge in the flying Honda? Pascal has already made a little bit of a break, but he's going to need that because the Astra's not the quickest thing in a straight line, especially with that 72 kilos on board. Do not get a slow down penalty through here, Pascal. And Stu Neal, look at how quickly that Leon is catching the very heavy Astra of John Petra. Stu Neal could have this done before we even get to the corner. John Petra looks like he's just going to let him have it. Yes, he does. Stu Neal leads the way. John Petra tucks into second. Lawson into third. Newton in fourth. Sylvander in fifth. Where's Shaw's user? Shaw's has actually dropped a place. Shaw's has dropped down to 14th. Just behind Nenad. Then there's a bit of a gap to Carl Smith in P15. Creed in 16th. South 17th. Looks like it might be slightly harder going than I thought for Shaw's here. Just ahead of Nick Papadim is Van den Burr in the I-30. Just seems to be holding Nick Papadim and the rest of them up a little bit at the moment. Shaw's has a look to the inside of Nenad. Nenad had an inside for the second part. He'll be back on the outside for the third part, and Shaw's user is through. Nenad didn't look to be fighting that one too hard. I think he realises the amount of pace that Shaw's has, and to sit and try and hold him up would be a complete waste of time. But Nenad now is also coming under real pressure from Carl Smith, who is looking very racy in these early stages. With the heavier cars ahead of him, can Carl Smith make up some places? He's got Tom Cree behind him. We've got a car off in the background. That is Rob South. What's happened to Rob South? Rob South has gone off the road. He's got it back on. That's the number 9. That's Andrea Nota, who's got it wrong in the middle of the bus stop as well. Somehow everybody has managed to avoid him. But this will not be what Rob needs at the moment. Sliding down the order. Coming under pressure now from Baldetto. The long side. Boki Obradovic is Tambourin in the Elantra as we come up through Eau Rouge. Tambourin slightly wide of the apex, and I was going to say I think he was going to get a cut track for that, and he has. And Rob South has been passed by Baldetto. Really struggling with that weight on that Honda, Rob. He's going to have another look back down the inside of Baldetto. That was a bit of a brave move from Rob. Has he made it stick? I think he has. Yes, he has. On the brakes, took Baldetto back, and Baldetto now has been mugged by Novakovic and Tambourin. So Baldetto made one place and lost 2 more. And now he's got Simon Cook up behind him. Sorry, it's not Baldetto, it's Ferilli. My apologies, Andrea. Once again, though, Rob South unable to break away. Just doesn't have that pace, doesn't have that confidence. Listas has made his way up to 24th after not finishing the opening race. And he's having a look down the inside now as Simon Cook. Squeeze him a bit to the apex. That's the 55 off ahead. That's Ferilli. Ran a bit wide. And Boki having a look all over the back of Rob South. and just seems to, even with the weight on board, just seems to get to the end of the straight and just pulls that little bit of a gap. And Rob can hold on and fight on for another day, and that is Simon Cook in the background trying to have a go back at George Relistas, who looked to have taken the move into the bus stop. George will have the inside for turn 1. Simon gives him the room. George just doesn't get the drive off the corner though, and Simon Cook stays ahead. Back up to the front. Stu Neal leads from Jean Petra. Lawson really putting Pascal under pressure now. And Stu Neal has moved out to help his Apex Predators teammate get past the Astra. That's great teamwork from the Apex Predators boys. Using the toe to give him that extra little bit of speed to get past Pascal Jean Petra. But Jean Petra doing a great job with the 72 kilos on board to still be running in the top 3. Paul Newton, highest place he's been running in the championship so far, currently in P4. And doing a stellar job by the looks of it. Chris Minsky is in P5, Sylvander P6, Laurinavicius P7, Nenad in P8. And look at this gaggle of cars up behind the 2 Peugeots of Papadim and Laurinavicius. It is almost like everyone going on to Noah's Ark. Everyone's going 2 by 2, but actually getting absolutely nowhere. So Laurinavicius leads the way. Papadim, his teammate, in behind. In behind that's Nenad Vladisavljevic. In behind that is Kerbalisha, with User trying to carve his way through this lot with his superior pace. And he does now have a look at Kerbalisha. That off in the background there was Carl Smith. He's ran a bit wide. That's allowed Novakovic to get through, and Carl Smith, who was doing such a great job, has slipped back a couple of places. That's Baldetto through as well. Just that tiny bit of little mistake. Touch into the gravel. And here we go again. Still Nick Papadim is trying to hold everybody up. Nenad has got right alongside, right along the pit wall. Forces his way through. George is to the outside. Is he going to swoop to the inside and follow Nenad? No, he doesn't. I think he wishes he might have done. He's going to try and go right round the outside of the Peugeot. That's not going to work. Has to tuck back into the behind. Nenad now will not have the pace on the run up through Eau Rouge that Nick will have. Nick's tried to drop a gear and he's just lost the front end of the Peugeot a little bit. That's going to cost Nick Papadim. Through will come Shores Usa. Nick will tuck immediately straight back in behind and try and pick the toe back up. This group has just sort of evened itself out a little bit. Carl Smith trying to follow Suzuki through. He's got past Baldetto. Suzuki's got past Novakovic. And Carl Smith is trying to make back those places that he just lost. Suzuki down on the inside of Novakovic. Carl Smith trying to stick to that Alpha and follow him through. Novakovic a bit wide of the apex there. Carl will get a better exit. What can he do with that better exit though, as we run down towards the very fast double right-hander? Nothing with it yet. Suzuki though is carrying ballast on board. That's going to hold Novakovic up as we get towards the fast part of the circuit. Neither of Novakovic or Smith or Nota for that matter, or Baldetto, sorry, for that matter, running ballast. So this is where it's going to hurt Suzuki. And Novakovic looks like he's just trying to tuck himself up under the rear wing. And Carl's done it again, just with a weight on board and perhaps not realising how much understeer being in the toe would make. He's just slipped those two wheels into the gravel again, and it's lost him that place out to Baldetto. Balbetto then has run wide through the fast left-hand kink. Will Smith have a look into the bus stop? You have to be very brave into there. So Carl won't, and there's guys heading for the pit lane already. Who have we got in? That was one of the ballast cars. It was Poddy Flack has gone early. So too has Rob van den Berg and Shaw's User, as expected. Shaw's has decided, no, it's taking me too long to get through the traffic. I will box early and try and get the clean air. Also into the pit lane comes Derek Neal and Ferilli, I believe that is. So User is off and underway, so too is Poddy Flack, who seems to have lost a fair bit of time to Shaw's in that stop. And also lost a fair bit of time to Rob van den Berg as well. Not sure why Poddy's stop took quite so long as it did, but now this is going to be interesting to see the gap between Shaw's User and everybody else as we go back to the Novakovic-Suzuki battle. This is the closest gaggle of cars on circuit at the moment. In behind that is Relistas South and Tamburin. And Carl Smith, oh, he's made another mistake. Come on, Carl. Settle into your rhythm. One of the hardest things to do. Get back into your rhythm after making a mistake. Because he was up and running in the top 10, 11. And he wasn't being dropped by them either, so he'll be frustrated at that. And then you tend to push yourself that little bit too hard, knowing that you were good enough to be up there. And then you tend to make more mistakes, which I think is what Carl's doing at the minute. Just needs to settle back down. There's still plenty of time in this race for him to make places up. Just needs to get into his rhythm, get into his lap time, and Carl is in. Carl has decided enough's enough. He's going to take that break now, regroup and come back stronger. And Nick Papadin finally has been passed by Charles Sylvander after doing a stellar job of holding everybody up. Nenad in behind is really trying to push, but he keeps getting some slowdown penalties for just over pushing the limits. It might be because he's so tucked up behind Kerbelia that he can't actually see where he's putting it through Eau Rouge. But now Nick is not under so much pressure. He is now back putting the pressure on to Charles Sylvander and creeping ever and ever closer towards Jean Petra. And Newton is starting to close in on Jean Petra a little bit. And this is Papadim having a look down the inside to retake Sylvander, and he's done it through the S's. But this is where now the unballasted Hyundai will look to come back at the Peugeot, carrying that ballast. Can Sylvander wind it up? Let's look at the gap. Sylvander to Papadim, under 2/10. Pretty even though, through the kink. Peugeot, as we said, is no slouch, and Sylvander's made a mistake under braking. He's going to run deep into the bus stop. We'll go for another lap. That was Newton, though, heading for the pit lane. So Newton is in. So Newton is one of the front runners. This is going to be interesting now between Newton and Shaw's user. Just how much has Shaw's user's pace caught him up? Shaw's is already coming through the kink. And he is streaked away from Rob van den Berg. He's put a 4-second gap between himself and van den Berg. Shaw's user, I think this is going to be easy pickings. Newton, yeah, he's still in the box. Newton is on his way out now. There goes Shaw's user on the right. The 79, that's Nenad. How close is Nenad to Shaw's user? He's going to come out just ahead of User, but User's going to have the more speed down the straight. User gets through. Can Nenad tuck straight in behind? Yes, he does. But Nenad, though, will be on cold tyres and will struggle to stick with Shaw's user up through here. That's going to be another slowdown, is it, for Nenad? I'm sure it will be. So, User, the early stop is working. He's making places. Who's going to be next to pit out of the top drivers? Still out on track without a stop is Stu Neal, Phil Lawson. Chris Minsky has got ahead of Jean Petra. So, does Jean Petra box now? He's not under pressure from behind. He needs to try and get out ahead of Shaw's user, which is going to be a very, very tall order already. The pace that Shaw's is going. But let's just keep an eye on this front four. Who does what as we head towards the bus stop? Chris Minsky going slightly defensive through there, and Jean Petra much stronger on the brakes, and he's touched right up behind. So Neal carries on, Lawson carries on, Jean Petra thought about it and then carries on as Chris Minsky boxes. Jean Petra doesn't want to get stuck up behind Chris Minsky, but he's going to need a stellar lap now. Without a tow, he's all on his own. He's too far back from Lawson and Neal. But this needs to be the lap now from Jean Petra. There's a big gaggle in the pit lane now as well. Baldetto, Relistas, Tamburin, Cook, all in. Who does what? That's Kerbalia, I believe, on his way out. Tamburin's in and to the box. Simon must feel like an absolute eternity to get down to your pit box right at the end of the pit lane. And who he came in with, I think that's Relistas. Relistas is already off and moving. Tamburin is off and moving. And Chris Minsky has got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. I told you it would happen to somebody who was running out front. And unfortunately, it has been called in Chris Minsky, who has sped in the pit lane, which means he will have to carry out a drive-through penalty. Simon Cook comes out. He comes out a little way behind Tamburin and Relistas. So Tamburin really had the jump on that through the pit stops. He got ahead of Relistas. Stu Neal from Lawson from Jean Petra. Shaw's user is 20 seconds behind Rob South. So he's around about 24, 25 seconds behind Jean Petra. I'm pretty sure it takes around about 30 seconds to get into the pit lane get your 2 tyre stop and get back out again. So I have a funny feeling that by the time these 3 pit, and they're in now, all 3 of them are in now, it's going to be a race in the box. Stu Neal leads them in, followed by Lawson, followed by Jean Petre, who could close up to the 2 of them here. And it is a top 3 race in the box. Jean Petre's pit box is right at the start of the pit lane. Car goes up, front tyres are changed. Where is Shaw's user? Shaw's user has just come through the kink. Jean Petre is off and moving. That's Rob South coming in. Stu Neal and Lawson also on their way and moving. So the front 3 pretty even in the pit stop. Rob South gets out of the way as he boxes. There's Shaw's user just coming through. Phil Lawson has got a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. That's 2 of the pro drivers with a drive-through, and Pascal gets out just ahead of Shaw's user. It's Nenad Vladisavljevic all over again, but this time, what can Shaw's user do? He's going to be closer to Jean Petre. Jean Petre's moved over and just allowed Shaw's user to go through. Pascal knows that he is not racing Shaw's user this time around. The speed difference is too great, but he is ahead, and he is ahead by over a second, by over 3 seconds actually of Nenad. And obviously Phil Lawson is going to have to serve that drive-through penalty. So Pascal could potentially be looking at a P3 finish in this second race, which wouldn't be too bad for damage limitation. And this is the Pro-Am 1 battle. Tom Creed versus Zezo Suzuki. Suzuki goes defensive on the inside. Creed is going to look to go all the way around the outside, or is he going to look to cut back on the late apex? Can't quite do it. Poddy Flack. Why is Poddy Flack down in 14th? Not too sure what's happened to Poddy Flack. I'm sure he was running up in the top 10, but he's currently P14, so unless he's had an accident or he's had an off or he's had a drive-through penalty, I didn't see it come up on the board. Current fastest lap has been posted by Shaw's user, which is a 2:29.3. Sylvander leads the way, but 24 seconds ahead of Stu Neal is not enough for his stop. And in fact, judging by the way that the time is coming down, I would say Sylvander, yes, he is in. So Sylvander is in the box. Shaw's user gets past Stu Neal into the bus stop. That would have been a choreographed move to allow the unballasted car out into the lead and tow Stu Neal around. And Sylvander now is coming out of the pit lane. Where is he going to feed out? These 3 will go through. Jean Petre might just about get through, but he might be able to hold up Nenad. Jean Petre will just about get through on the I-30. He says, just. Sylvander, though, will immediately look to come back on the attack, but he will be on cold tyres as we run down towards the next section of track. But in the tow, look at the distance in pace between the Hyundai and the Opel. Jean Petre hasn't defended this either. He's going to look to hold it around the outside. There's a bit of contact. Sylvander tucks in ahead, and Jean Petre has lost all of that time to Nenad. And Pascal has moved over and allowed Vladisavljevic through as well. So Jean Petre is playing the championship game already. He's not bothered about fighting overall position. He wants points. And also, if Vladisavljevic and Sylvander start fighting, he may obviously take those positions anyway. But why should he do all the work? He's going to let Nenad do that and look to just sit there and reap the reward. And Sylvander just got his line wrong through there, and that's given Nenad a little bit of a look, and the little touch on the gravel won't help. John Petra looks to back up with Nenad Vladisavljevic. Nenad gets through, John Petra gets blocked off by Sylvander. Now are the teammates going to work together here, because Sylvander could, realistically, just lift his foot off the gas a little bit and allow his teammate Rob van den Berg to creep up behind Pascal John Petra. And it would be a nice little team score for the two of them. So, Phil Lawson is serving his drive-through penalty. How far is this going to drop him down? P10, P11, his teammate Poddy Flack is going to go through. Oh, this would be agonising for Phil Lawson. He can get back on the power now. As Novakovic goes through, Carl Smith just coming through turn one. Isn't going to get him. Sylvander now having a look at Nenad. He's got a far better run out. And he's got through as well. So Nenad got past Sylvander. He's going to have to do it again, because Sylvander has used that unballasted I-30 to perfection down the Kemmel Straight. And Nenad immediately goes back on the attack. And Sylvander having to use all the track and a bit more. But he's looking to get a little bit, he's getting a bit untidy. And now Nenad will pounce. As soon as you make that little mistake, especially with these pro drivers, you cannot make the slightest of mistakes. They will pounce on it. And Nenad looks to do that, but a little bit more of a touch on the exit of the fast double right-hander. Sylvander defending. Nenad's trying to hold the outside line to have the inside line for the second part of the corner. Can't quite do it this time, and Sylvander cuts back across, holds the line. All of the time, Sylvander's teammate Van den Berg is closing up on them, and he's bringing Nick Pappadin with him. And Suzuki, not too sure what's happened with Suzuki, but he has been disqualified. He's gone over the incident point limit. And there is also a DNF for Boki Obradovic, but massive cork in the bottle now is Charles Sylvander, who's made another slight mistake on the run out of the bus stop. Nenad, though, with the low gear pull, not quite enough with that weight on board, that Seat Cupra to get alongside the I-30. Sylvander now needs to be millimetre perfect as we run down and up through Eau Rouge, and then he might just about be able to stave this off, because the Hyundai will have the pace down the straight. What he can't do is do that and get a slow down, and it's exactly what he's done. He's going to have to try and shave that off somewhere. He's going to look to try and get a break first, and already Pascal is coming under pressure from Rob van den Berg as well in the other Hyundai i30, who slips his way through past the championship leader as well. Pascal Jean Petra starting to move backwards as we move on the final lap. Still Nenad trying to go the long way round now with Charles Sylvander. Can he do it? Oh, he was a quarter of the way alongside, but not enough. Nenad backed out of it, and is that going to be that? Nenad had to back out. He's lost a bit of time. He's going to struggle to close that back up. do think that is Sylvander away. Jean-Petre, though, stuck in that battle with Van den Berg. And in behind is Nick Papadim. Paul Newton also. Big shout out to Paul Newton. He's had a fantastic run. Currently in P8. But back to Nenad. Oh, Papadim's run wide. Nenad still trying to have a go at Sylvander. Sylvander will go defensive. Vladislavovich will go right the way around the outside. That's an audacious move, but he's managed to do it. He's parked it on the apex of the second part of the corner, and Nenad now for the run for the line. Nenad snatches third position. Has he? Yes, he has. In the bus stop chicane. Your race winner is George Usa. Stu Neal finishes in second place. Nenad Vladislavovich with a brilliant pass into the bus stop on Charles Sylvander, who finishes in fourth. Van den Berg stays ahead of Jean-Petre for fifth. Jean-Petre sixth, Papadim seventh, Kerbelesia eighth. Paul Newton in ninth, Tom Creed 10th, Laurinavicius 11th, Flack made his way back up to 12th, Novakovic 13th, Carl Smith 14th. He did manage to get ahead of Phil Lawson. Krasminski in 16th, South 17th, Baudetto 18th, Nota 19th, Felistas 20th, Tamburin 21st, Alves 22nd, Ferrilli 23rd, Campion 24th, Simon Cook 25th, Mauricio Julian, as it stands, is going to come through in 26th, and Derek Neal is going to round out the finishers for us. Can he close in on Julian? Into the bus stop. He can close in. Might have needed an extra lap or two for Derek Neal. But that result for Simon Cook and for Mauricio Julian is going to make the AMS interesting. So George Usa wins and takes fastest lap with a 2:29.3. The Vanda TC of Sylvander and Van den Berg, it was their first evening tonight. What a great run they had. And also a big shout out to Paul Newton in only his second race evening event with the TCSRL, coming home inside the top 10. Well done to Paul, and to Tom as well, actually, who also finished in P10 in the Lincoln Co. in only his second race with us. Very good stuff, gents. So that is the end of this evening's racing. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to come and give it a go, as I said, there is a Discord link back near the start of this video. Also, just have a look for the TCSRL race server on the Race Room multiplayer, and jump in the practice lobby and come and have a go. I've been Russ Butcher. Thank you very much, and we will see you next week.